or a newspaper will make a satire or even offensive anecdote against the state of Israel, no one will complain. And if you will publish something which will not be well received by the Muslims in Europe, your office could be bombed. So you have to be very careful choosing your word when you are talking to the Muslim minority in Europe, and I'm okay with that. We have to be very respectful for every minority, but we shouldn't treat different minorities differently. And this is something which we are facing now in Europe, that sometimes the common sense is not used anymore in our politics. I'm trying, when I'm talking in Poland, when I'm a politician, and I'm an elected politician for 25 years, so I have to talk a lot. When I'm trying to explain this problem, I'm using this argument. If you are, I'm using this argument, this is something very unwise if you are fighting with the God as a politician. Because if you don't believe in God, I think it's very stupid to fight against something you don't believe in. And if you are believing God, it's even more stupid to fight against him. So I think that this is something which I'm trying to explain you as anecdote, but it shouldn't be a business of politicians. I'm repeating it again, to interfere into the relations between the person and his faith.
If I could, if I could add to that, I think we're getting to the heart of the debate here. The argument that something has been happening for 1,000 years is a good argument, but it's not good enough, dear colleague, because you could say, for 1,000 years, when we caught thieves in the Islamic world, we chopped off their hand. So let's continue doing it, because it's happened for 1,000 years. Or let's marry out our young daughters from 9 or 12, like has been happening for 1,000 years in Afghanistan. So obviously we won't accept that argument. What is the truth in this matter is, and we have to go back to the European way of life. We have, dear friends, a Judeo-Christian tradition in Europe that's going back 1,000 years. And that is where we need to look at. Christianity, but also Judaism, has gone through a form of enlightenment. We, for example, don't take every single line in the Bible literal. It says you should, an eye for an eye and is not a tooth for a tooth. We know in Judaism that when someone steals from you, he has to pay back a monetary sum. You don't say, let's take out his eye. Islam never went through that stage. Which means that today, when we have a large influx of people from another continent, we suddenly have that issue. Well, freedom of religion, how are we going to maneuver? Are we going to say freedom of religion for one and freedom of religion for the other? And the answer is yes and no. The answer is, let's look at where we are. We are in Europe. For thousands of years, we have been doing slaughter in Europe. So we should focus on the European Judeo-Christian traditions that we know, that are in respect with human rights, that are in respect with the way we live. And those are ones to be defended. But you can't say freedom of religion is absolute, because unfortunately we have other religions that are new and have never adapted and need to be adapted as well to our modern way of life here in Europe. And no, you can't marry off your daughter when she's 9 years old. And no, you can't chop someone's hand off when he steals. And I think that that is an important point to make, because the Jewish community has become collateral damage. I mean, I wear a kippah here, but if I go to court, or if I want to become an official policeman or work as a judge, then they will tell me, or even work for the city hall, they will tell me, you can't wear a kippah, or you can't wear a cross. Why is that? Who did a little cross ever hurt? Who did a kippah ever hurt? And we know what the answer is. The answer is they don't want a woman with a headscarf because that's alien and that is threatening to them. And I've said from day one, if you have a problem with a Muslim veil, which I don't, but some do, and if in Europe or in my country most people don't like it, then say that you have a problem there. Say that a Muslim veil is a discrimination of women. Don't say it's a problem of a religious symbol. Is my kippah a sign of the discrimination of the Jewish male? Of course not. So the Jewish community has become collateral damage. And we need to fix this. We need to do this by changing the narrative to going to the Judeo-Christian rights that we've had in Europe for 1,000 years. And if we have a new religion that is in some forms extremists, then we should say very clearly that's where we have an issue.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this panel. There's an awful lot more we could talk about, and I think Michael has a sensible approach. We need to get back to basics on this issue. We need to build a fence around and defend these Judeo-Christian values on which we all live. So if you could put your hands together warmly for Konstantinos Karagounis, for Senator Michal Kamiński, and my dear friend Michael Freilich. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great stuff. Thank you. Honestly, I'm starting to feel guilty. You're going to end up being sick looking at me. But ladies and gentlemen, yesterday we were supposed to be talking about the Jews of Ukraine. And we didn't get an opportunity to do so because our next speaker was stuck, couldn't make it because of travel considerations. But I think when one looks at it, there are a lot of Ukrainians with us who have simply had an awful time. I mean, we're talking about these consequential issues for us as Jewish communities, and what is going on in Ukraine is very, very existential. Before I bring our next guest up to talk and share some of those experiences, we have a short video from the Federation of Jewish Communities in Ukraine, just to show you a flavor of what the Federation does, and then we'll bring up our guest. Thank you.
as we've entered the fourth month of war, so many new families need the basic food. As you see, we have these volunteers packing 2,000 packages every day so we can get to every Jewish family on a monthly basis.
Ladies and gentlemen, I had seen that video before, up until the war. In Ukraine itself, we went to Babin Yar, we brought a delegation to Babin Yar, and it was emotional then to watch, and I felt myself literally choking up there now when we see what is at stake. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to ask the Vice President of the Federation of Jewish Communities of Ukraine, Rabbi Raphael Hutman, to come and address this conference.
Доброе утро. Мы с Украины. That's how we greet people in Ukraine today. The world is facing a very, very uncertain time. We're living in fear, not knowing will officially the Third World War be declared, or it will just continue to be unofficial? Could it escalate? Will it escalate? And God forbid, how far can and will it go? We heard from panelists and speakers how it took the world 5 years to react in the Second World War. We in Ukraine are living, seeing, and feeling this destruction. There's a reason why I don't often speak publicly about what's going on in Ukraine, because it's difficult to speak about it. There are millions of people that have been displaced inside the country, outside the country, and have no idea what tomorrow holds. Thousands have been killed in Ukraine, a country I call home, a country I've been living in for 29 years. Thousands of new orphans. The Jewish communities across Ukraine are living in this nightmare too. The Federation of Jewish Communities of Ukraine has been working in Ukraine since about 1997. I've been there since 1993. Nothing we trained for ever envisioned the work we're doing today. We've had to adapt. When the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent us to Ukraine in the early 90s as emissaries to help the Jewish communities in Ukraine, none of us had the slightest idea for a second that we could or would be planning evacuations of young people, of elderly people, while under fire. On the 8th of March, we rescued a mother, her 7-year-old, my 7-year-old daughter, 8-month-old son from Irpien. Took us 2 days. On the second day, we got it right, with only 6 bullet holes in the car. That's just one story. They are safely in Europe today. I had to convince a 96-year-old Jew, his name is Pesach, that he needed to evacuate from Kiev, from his apartment. He was living there with his 2 sons, one who has mental challenges. He's in his early 70s, and his second son who's in mid-60s, close friend of my colleague over here. And he says to me, Rebbe, I already evacuated from Kiev once. Now you want to make me do it again? And that's not the irony. He evacuated from Kiev the first time away from the Germans to Russia. On the 8th of March, on the same bus with the lady and her daughter and her 8-month-old son, I evacuated him from the Russians to Germany. 96 years old. One Friday, this was already the second week, a relative from Lugano calls me and says, oh, not a relative of mine, a friend of ours who lives in Lugano, says, my uncle and aunt are in Kiev. Help me, get them out. I sent a car. I called them up and I said, whatever you can pack in a bag in 20 minutes, that's what goes with you. 20 minutes. That's all they had. 83 years old, lived his entire life in Kiev, and in 20 minutes, packed and left. It took Pesach and his two sons 5 days to the hour. They left 4 p.m. on the 8th of March, and at 4 p.m., it was actually 4:35 p.m., I got a photo of them having their first hot meal in Bad Hamburg. 5 days traveling. Pinchas and his wife, who left on Friday morning, it took them 6 days till they ended up in Lugano with their family. Families are being separated, wives from husbands, children from their fathers. I've been in Ukraine most of this time. I've come out to reintroduce myself to my wife and children every month or so. We had Pesach Seder in the center of Kiev with people who had never been to a Pesach Seder in their life before. It took a war to bring that out. People sat till 5 o'clock in the morning. We had a curfew in Kiev, so they came before the curfew began. Then it was 8 o'clock in the evening. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, we had a police escort to take everybody to their hotel that they were staying very close to our synagogue. On Shavuot, just a short couple of weeks ago, we merited in our synagogue to give a Jew from Kiev his first aliyah to the Torah on Shavuot, his bar mitzvah. He's turning 78 next month. It took a war to bring him to the synagogue. But these are some of the joys we try to cling to. In this crazy, uncertain time. On the same first day of Shavuot in Kiev, a grandmother of a student from our school in Kiev, the only missing link that we know of in her family history, received her Jewish name. Her two daughters had received a Jewish name several years ago in our synagogue. Her granddaughter, who's a pupil in our school, received a Jewish name. And the grandmother called me and she said, as you saw in the video, the food packages that we've been giving out since February, since before the war began, saving people's lives with essential food. She says, you helped evacuate my daughters and granddaughter to Germany. I want to thank you. Please tell me, what can I do? You name it, she said. Little did she know. I said, I need 1 hour of your time on Sunday morning, on Shavuot, for you to come to the synagogue and listen to the 10 Commandments. She came. The first time in her life, she heard the 10 Commandments, and she received her Jewish name, Esther. Her Hebrew birthday is around the time of Purim. You've heard of the city of Berdyansk. It's been in the news. I get a photo from the rabbi in Berdyansk. Black background with some candles lit. My first reaction was, who passed away? The next picture came a little clearer. I was able to make out there was a pot on top of these candles with a voice message. Please tell the representatives of the Federation of Jewish Communities of Ukraine that they saved our lives. For 3 years, we've been sending packages when COVID began, Judaism in a box, as you saw in the video. His message was, I apologize, we never used the candles to light Shabbat candles, but today they saved our lives. We were able to heat up food and water. They've been living with no electricity, no heating, no gas. Candles were saving their lives. We've had to raise millions of dollars and continue to try to do so, just to be able to send out essential, non-perishable food items, and in some places water. In Nikolaev, they don't have water, and they won't have for at least for another month. That's just one of the places. I was in Bucha and Irpin and Gostomo the day after it was liberated, before everything was cleared, and we were giving out food there. You may have noticed in the video a woman wearing a black headscarf. Her husband was killed. So in addition to delivering food, I had to make a special prayer. Took them 6 days to get permission and for it to be safe for them to go and bury her husband. And I got to put on tefillin with his son for the first time in his life in Bucha. Similar stories in Irpin. What you think you're hearing and seeing on the news is not a fraction of what's really going on. Every one of you has a voice. It's your obligation and duty to use it. The best way to fight evil is with good. The best way to fight darkness is with light. And that's our mission. That's what we need to do. I want to thank the EJA and Rabbi Margolin for supporting our efforts in Ukraine to help the people of Ukraine, to help the Jews of Ukraine. Rabbi Koves and the European Union and all the countries in Europe who have taken refugees in and continue to look after them. It's a very, very big struggle. We spent years building our Jewish communities, and in a matter of weeks, we have been dismantling them. And this is another big challenge and struggle that we have to deal with to bring everyone together. I would like to call the daughter of a close friend of mine for many, many years, Alisa Rostovs, who recently escaped out of Mariupol, to tell over a little bit her story, how she got out and Jewish life and the Federation's activities in Mariupol. Alisa. Пожалуйста.
Здравствуйте все. Excuse me, my English not very good, so I'll speak in Russia, but I want to tell in English. I want to say to all of you, thank you. To everybody from you, to each of you, thank you for saving our lives. Каждый из вас, кто находится в этом зале, каждая еврейская организация, каждая общественная организация разных вероисповеданий, каждый из вас открыл свои двери, помог. Возможно, к вам в дверь не постучали, но вы принесли что-то от себя. Каждый, кто отдал вещи на благотворительность, каждый, кто готов открыть свою дверь, спасибо каждому из вас от имени еврейской общины Мариуполя и от имени каждого беженца из Мариуполя. Мой город сейчас практически разрушен. Но до этого, до начала войны, у нас была очень хорошая община. Это была небольшая община по сравнению с Днепром, по сравнению с большими городами, но это была дружная община со школой, с миньяном, с синагогой. За 2 года до начала войны мы переехали в большое здание. У нас была крошечная синагога, и мы переехали в большое двухэтажное здание. В разгар пандемии нам это удалось. И там было очень красиво, она была в центре города. Сейчас она полностью разрушена. Есть видео людей, которые приехали специально, чтобы снять, и кому будет интересно, я могу это показать. Полностью разрушенное здание. Слава Богу, что из него смогли вывести торы. До войны у нас была школа, у нас была молодежь, была еврейская молодежь, которая приходила на шаббат, были те, кто зажигали свечи. Было очень много всего, и даже пандемия не остановила это. От Федерации еврейских общин Украины мы получили наборы, и каждый смог дома провести седер. Мы были вместе, и они были в своих домах. Сейчас этого уже нет. Во время войны мы старались помочь максимально. Поскольку у нас была благотворительная кухня, были школы, садик, был запас продуктов достаточно большой. И пока не прилетели снаряды в склад, мы раздавали каждый день. Даже когда не было связи, евреи Мариуполя знали, что в 10 утра они могут прийти и что-то получить. Я приходила, открывала склад и просто давала то, что было, потому что не было возможности какие-то наборы там гуманитарные, стандартные формировать. Мы просто давали то, что могли в тот момент. И таким образом то, что только что говорили, свечи ханукальные, маца, это все действительно спасало жизни. Когда нет света, когда нет газа, в минус 15 в феврале, когда нету воды, когда просто собирается дождевая вода, чтобы можно было минимально помыть руки и что-то вымыть, одна ханукальная свеча горит час, а если не на сквозняке и регулярно обрезать фитиль, то дольше. Мы это знаем, потому что это был единственный источник света. Единственное, что могло освещать подвал, в котором мы сидели. И очень многие члены общины, все в тот момент были в подвале. И выезжать они смогли с 15 марта. Город был заблокирован, магазины разграблены, никаких лекарств. Меня часто спрашивают, много ли у нашей общины потерь вследствие войны. Когда я какие-то имена называю, говорят, их убило, ну, в смысле войной. Я говорю, ну если человек умер без лекарств, это же не прямое попадание снаряда, но это следствие войны. И после 15 марта люди смогли выезжать на своих машинах. В тот момент город был под ужасными обстрелами. Никто не мог вывозить тех, у кого не было машин. Сначала выезжали те, кто мог, и только потом наша община смогла начать вывозить. То есть приезжали люди на адрес, говорили, у вас 5 минут, в городе обстрел, люди хватали документы, садились в машину, связи нет возможности собрать людей в одной точке, нет возможности предупредить, что за вами приедут. Просто, если человек дома, то его забирали, если нет, то через некоторое время старались вернуться. Были районы, в которые невозможно было приехать. Авиаудары постоянно сыпались над городом все. То есть сейчас, когда слышно самолет, наверное, все мариупольцы, когда его слышат, они ждут, что этот звук закончится взрывом. Просто самолеты не летают. Это невозможно к этому привыкнуть, к просто летящему самолету или вертолету. Эвакуация началась в Днепр, и из Днепра она началась в Европу, в Израиль, через Кишинев, через Варшаву, через все европейские города, с которыми граничит Украина. И спасибо каждому городу, каждому из вас, кто имел возможность помочь в этом. Это огромное количество людей, которые просто вы спасали жизни. Сейчас в Мариуполе еще остались евреи, они уже могут так или иначе выходить на связь, мы стараемся их поддержать. Многие остались, потому что их близкие похоронены во дворе, в саду, в парке. И сейчас они не могут уехать, они ждут возможности, чтобы оказать им последнее. Ну, то есть я когда звоню, мне говорят, да, мы готовы ехать в Израиль, мы готовы ехать в Европу, готовы выехать просто в Украину. Но когда мы сможем позаботиться о тех, кто во время войны ушел? Стала ли это причиной войны? Я уже объясняла. В большинстве случаев это холод, это голод, это отсутствие медикаментов. Это косвенные жертвы войны. Спасибо вам всем. Спасибо за то, что вы знаете, за то, что вам не все равно, и за то, что понимаете, что наша община Мариуполя, она все еще вместе. Мы все время общаемся, мы все время друг друга поддерживаем, но физически мы уже во всем мире. Теперь наш дом – это целый мир, и мой дом разрушен тоже. И большое спасибо каждому, кто поддерживает нас.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you once again for being here with us. And I think we have almost saved the best for the last. From the European Parliament, we have the honor of having with us the European Parliament Vice President Nicola Beer from Germany, who is specifically from the President of the Parliament, has given her the special role of Special Envoy combating anti-Semitism, and she's the chair of the European Parliament Working Group Against Anti-Semitism. Mrs. Beer, thank you.
Thank you very much, my friends, Excellency. It's really a great honor to be today with you, a great pleasure for me, and I'm really delighted to be able to attend this conference. It was sorry and a pity that I couldn't come yesterday, but it was important for me to come, even if it's nearly finished, just to be together with you. I think especially in difficult times like this ones we are experiencing in Europe right now, and we just heard a really emotional and touching speech about life in Ukraine, Jewish life in Ukraine before the war. In such experiencing times, it is of utmost importance to work together to protect minorities, to protect the roots of our continent, which are based in the Jewish-Christian tradition. Unthinkable, our nowadays Europe without those roots being present in our culture, in our legal frameworks, in our way of life. Unfortunately, anti-Semitic narratives and disinformations are on the rise. First, the COVID-19 pandemic, and now Putin's brutal war in Ukraine. Both helped spreading and manifesting anti-Semitic hatred online as well as offline. We have had a disturbing surge in conspiracy theories against Jews since the crisis began. Every anti-Semitic rise like this puts European values like respect for democracy, human rights, rule of law, fundamental freedoms, good governance, and stability of our societies in danger. The measures to prevent such a situation have many faces. We need to meet the challenge of protecting and securing Jewish life, but we also need to raise awareness, to educate, to prevent. For this reason, I thank all of you for coming together here in Budapest to discuss how we can collectively combat anti-Semitism and foster Jewish life around Europe. The European Parliament is on your side. That President Metsola installed the new office of a special envoy for combating discrimination of religion, especially anti-Semitism, shows that this is a task of the whole House, not only of one working group against anti-Semitism of some special colleagues, but really of the whole House in all the political families you see there. Not only with words, but also as far as enforcement on the ground is concerned. Of course, we make resolutions, legislations, we have strategy on EU level, and I know that the Commissioner was here to present his strategy for fostering Jewish life throughout Europe, and this is important. Yes, we have pieces of words like the Digital Service Act, for example, and I'm really convinced that this is a game changer for creating a safer digital sphere free of anti-Semitism. Like the adoption of the IRA definition for all the institutions in the European Union is crucial for identifying anti-Semitism on a common ground. Like the strategy on combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life by the European Commission serves as the right framework for further progress. But to have a real impact, to see progress, implementation is needed. We need enforcement on the base of the IRA definition in our cities and countries, in our schools and universities, in our museums and exhibitions. And to speak it out clearly, nobody can hide behind the freedom of speech or against the background on the current events with 15th Documenta in Kassel, in my hometown, Germany, behind the freedom of art. Those freedoms are not absolute. Anti-Semitism is an untouchable red line, and we have to act. This painting of artist collectivity tearing party is clearly anti-Semitic. Nevertheless, the artist claimed to be misinterpreted. It has to be removed. And I even cannot say what me shocks the most, the painting itself, the naivety of the exhibition makers, or the attempt of justification of the artist for their work. And it is important that the Committee of Culture in German National Parliament already reacted, called for comprehensive explanation and intervention by responsible office holders. Nevertheless, dear friends, throughout our European member states, there is a lot happening already. Many member states and regions in the European Union have their own strategy to combat anti-Semitism and foster Jewish life. We see a lot of very interesting measures which can inspire as best practice exchange, from education via civil servant trainings, for example, for teachers, judges, policemen, to sport clubs, from online sphere to real life in all its facets of our communities, up to the fighting by legislation and law enforcement. And in a broader approach, fostering Jewish life also by making more visible, more experienceable for everybody as one part of fighting anti-Semitism by knowledge and empathy, by protecting Jewish rules and traditions as crucial part of the freedom of religion, because Brit Milah and Shehita are not outdated folklore, but indispensable part of Jewish life. The task is not an easy one, I know, because the discussions often are highly emotional. But to promote peaceful and cooperative life in our communities, to install understanding and respect, we need a continuous and open dialogue in our society, as well as between our political institutions and civil society, in order to find acceptable and sustainable solutions. Actual progress differs depending on commitments made by member states. Here we need you as experts, you as partners, you as a sort of reality check on the ground. For this reason, your study about a country index of respect and tolerance you presented yesterday is an important tool to further improve our actions. These important works need to be done on all levels, from the local community, the national level, up to the European level. And for this reason, I would like to strengthen the network within our member states, especially from colleagues in European Parliament with those in national and regional parliaments, to have a network of parliamentarian legislators who are committed to combat anti-Semitism and can drive change on the ground. Collaboration and knowledge sharing is key for me for making Europe a safer place for Jewish life. Because I cannot imagine our Europe without a strong and prosperous Jewish life. And so I would like to encourage all of you that we continue to find ways to collaborate. Member states with European Union, societies with governments and parliaments. With that in mind, I would like to highlight the Vienna Declaration signed by 8 member states, an effort by committed member states to advance collaboration on fighting anti-Semitism in Europe. Let us just join forces on all levels so that we can prevent Jews from thinking about leaving Europe because they do not feel welcomed as citizens, or even worse, because they do not feel safe. And then, better sooner than later, I really hope we can build a world without anti-Semitism, without racism, without discrimination, and with respect and tolerance for all religious beliefs as an integral part of our common societies. Thank you.
Chairman would like to thank you, so please.
That's microphone work. So, thank you so much, Madam Beer, Vice President of the European Parliament. Dear friends, I just wanted to thank you personally for taking the time to come here today. We met many politicians in the last 20 years. Jean Maguet, I guess, for more than 20 years. Although you look younger than me sometimes, with your energy. But you also met a lot of politicians. We thank you not only for taking the time to come here today, because I know flying for 2 hours with the delays at the airport, then to go immediately back, it's not always an easy task. But I would like you to know that with people like you in the leadership of Europe, we feel much more confidence in our future. Yesterday, we published the surveys that I mentioned to you last week, and it's also with your home country, Germany, who received the highest grade with the government performance, with the effort Germany does to ensure better life for the Jewish community. So I would like to thank you so much for your commitment. You show that there are politicians who have action behind their words, because we are a bit sometimes fed up with empty statements. So having a person like you in the leadership of Europe is a great confidence for us. And we wish you great success, not only for your career, for your kids, not only for your career, but also for all of us, for our future, for European future. She deserves a lot of respect, and we thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and for all the work you do. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Madam Vice President. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the final item that we have. And before we go into our resolution, it seems like a good opportunity to ask the chairman to sum up the rationale briefly of our conference. And we are an association that obviously likes to talk. We're an association that is committed to concrete political action. And as a consequence of having met here for the last couple of days, we have proposed, and we'll be having a look at this resolution shortly, a framework for governments which we would like to send to every single political institution in Europe with recommendations of how to foster and underline and support Jewish communities. So with that said, before we get to the resolution, our chairman, Rabbi Menachem Margolin, will speak.
We will be short. Friends, we all came here, as discussed yesterday, not just in order to participate in another conference, not just to have another opportunity to meet. Of course, it is very important to meet, very important to share opinion, but much more important is to take actions. Yesterday, we were unveiling our study, which show what are the most important conditions that are vital for Jewish life in Europe. After looking at what's happening in Europe, we're going to propose now the conclusion of this conference, that we'll be asking all of you to vote if you are in favor of it. That will give us the power to go together with you, on your behalf and together with you, to all European governments to ask them to implement the recommendations. I would like to ask the technical team, if you please go to the screen, the resolution on the screen now. You have the opportunity to read it all together. I would like to ask Alex, please, let's read the conclusion with everyone.
With pleasure. Motion proposed for EGA Annual Conference, moved by EGA Chairman Rabbi Menachem Margolin. Whilst we, Jewish leaders, gathered in Budapest on this day, 21st of June, 2022, welcome statements of support and words of goodwill from our respective governments, we believe that governments and regional authorities must adopt a series of measures to foster Jewish life and safeguard Jewish communities. We Jewish leaders propose these in order to improve the feelings of security felt by Jewish communities, the following vital measures. 1, the adoption of a zero-tolerance policing and judiciary police policy towards anti-Semitism. 2, increased policing presence on the streets in flashpoint/areas of intercommunal tension. 3, education provision for all immigrants and schools on the need to respect diversity, plurality, and basic tenets of Jewish faith, customs, and practice. 4, enshrine the primacy of freedom of religion for Jews in their respective countries by protecting kosher slaughter and circumcision from punitive legislation that impedes or bans both. 5, appoint a government coordinator for combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life. 6, the adoption in full of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. 7, establish a dedicated program for the memorialization of the Holocaust. 8, establish and maintain a central government and/or regional database of anti-Semitic incidents. 9, the dedicated supply of security equipment to Jewish communities. 10, dedicated support and promotion of Jewish culture, education, and the maintenance of synagogues. 11, decrease the number of UNGA votes that seek to arbitrarily and one-sidedly isolate and punish the State of Israel. We commend this resolution to national parliaments and/or the relevant regional authorities and ask the European Jewish Association to forward it to them on our shared behalf.
As you could all see, sorry.
I think there is a mistake on sentence 9. It's not the end of the line.
So 9 and 10. So we got 10 points. You're right.
So I think the point 10 is decrease the number and not the...
Mr. Markovich, you're absolutely right. Thank you.
I'm a lawyer.
A lawyer is a lawyer. Friends, as you could see also, those decisions, resolutions is also much more on taking actions, but not only statements. And Ricardo, please.
The 7th point, I don't love to use the word of Holocaust. This is not the word of Jewish.
So you prefer to change it with the word Shoah?
Please.
I think everyone could agree. Dear friends, if you are all in favor of this resolution to be sent to all European governments, to be asked them to adopt it, we will appreciate if you please could raise your right hand.
Why do we put decrease and not erase? But decrease, you admit some number of ways.
Yeah, of course, we take it into considerations that you value the index that was created and was presented here yesterday. It looks like we have a majority in this room, so I think we could guess that this resolution is accepted by all of you, and we thank you so much for your support. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
So we have a famous Jewish joke about a rabbi who was preparing his speech before Passover. As you know, before Passover, it is a great mitzvah, it's a great commandment to give charity for people in need. And the rabbi was preparing his speech to try to talk to the heart of people and ask them to donate for the people in need. And so the rabbi was at home preparing his speech and doing a lot of reverse. Then he went to the synagogue, then he came back. So his wife asked him, "How was your speech?" He said, "The speech was great." So she goes, "Did the people listen to you?" And he said, "Well, half of the people listened to me, and half of the people did not even look at me." So the wife said, "Well, my dear husband, but 50% is also great, no?" He said, "Yeah, but the 50% who listen to me are the 50% of the people in need. Those who could give did not even look at me." So we have your support. Now we have to make sure that also the people who are able to do, the government of Europe, will support it. We will work hard. We could promise you that we are going to work very hard in the coming days, weeks, months, decades, together with you, in order to convey the message to all European governments. And hopefully by next year, when we'll be presenting our index, we'll be able to see much more improvement in all over Europe. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to go soon to the memorial ceremony, but I will hand over the podium to the director of the European Jewish Association, that I think you all could admit who did a fantastic job yesterday and today, Alex Benjamin. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure, after the vote has been taken, to declare this conference finished. We hope you found it productive, and we will keep you all fully briefed as we continue our advocacy efforts in Brussels to take forward our resolution. In the meantime, I know a lot of you will be checking out, if you haven't done so already, but we have